Wisconsin Broadcasters Association Hall of Famer Bob Berry ruled Milwaukee's airwaves in the 60s and 70s. He spoke with countless musicians and celebrities over the years. Bob collected remarkable recordings of these encounters, which he's now sharing with the public. Here's Bob.
What unusual tie does Vaughn Meader have to Milwaukee? Vaughn was a film actor, musician, comedian, and impersonator. He was best known for his #1 album, The First Family, a 1962 comedic takeoff on the Kennedys in the White House. The First Family Volume 2 was also top 10. At the time, Volume 1 was the fastest-selling album and won a Grammy for Album of the Year.
Yes, well, there is no opening statement. I think I will just take the first question.
Sir, would you comment on the African situation, please?
Well, now, I'm not up to date on that. Now, I sent a personal representative to Africa some months ago. So far, she hasn't even dropped me a card. You in the flowered hat?
Yes, I'd like to.
Not you, sir. The lady behind you.
Sir?
Yes.
When will we send a man to the moon?
Whenever Senator Goldwater wants to go.
What are you going to do about the medical care for the aged?
Try to stay young.
Vaughn Meader performed his Kennedy impersonation around the country, on TV and in nightclubs, and we played cuts from the album on the radio. When the president was assassinated in 1963, the album was pulled off the shelves, and that part of Meader's career was over. President Kennedy thought the album was very funny, so on this, the anniversary of John F. Kennedy's birthday, we bring Vaughn Meader and the First Family to the podcast, and we'll find out about that unusual tie to Milwaukee.
Hi, Bob.
Vaughn Meader, famous and rich in the early 1960s for spoofing the lives of President John F. Kennedy and family on the record. The First Family is on the air with us now. How old were you when you hit it big with that album, The First Family, Vaughn?
Well, I was 27 and 28, Bob.
Now, weren't you in Milwaukee when you heard that President Kennedy had been shot?
Yes, I was. I just got off the plane and into a taxi. I was on my way, ironically enough, to entertain the state Democrats.
Yeah. Did your career end with the death of President Kennedy?
Well, it took somewhat of a sharp decline. I don't know if it ended.
How did President Kennedy react to the album, The First Family?
Well, he enjoyed it. He enjoyed it. I know in his news conference he said, they asked him about it, he said, I've heard it. He sounds more like my brother Teddy.
I always think, of course, Vaughn Meader is that biggest selling album there, the First Family. Now, do you regret your identification as a JFK impersonator?
Well, some way I do, some way I don't. At least I have an identification. But during that time, the public only knew of one thing I did. And, of course, a lot of people ask me, how did you feel? I felt like I could do so many other things. I thought I had a few other talents, songwriter, country musician, and singer, and things that people didn't know about. I wasn't really an impressionist. I had been a musician and went from that to playing and doing more comedy. And pretty soon I wasn't playing any music at all in the 60s. And, of course, when I got on the various shows in the 60s, all that they wanted to hear, or all that the powers that be wanted me to expose, was the Kennedy impression, because that was what was hot.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been having fun lately, playing and singing my own material.
You mentioned that John Kennedy, President Kennedy, said that you sounded a lot more like Teddy. Do you find that their voices are almost identical?
Well, they have identical roots. I think they're a little different, but not too much so.
Vaughn, give us just to bring back some memories. Just give us a little sample of John Kennedy.
The woods are lovely, dark and deep, and I have promises to keep. Miles to go before I sleep. Miles to go before I sleep.
How did it come to you that you could do Kennedy?
Oh, I did a political act in the village in the early 60s, and I talked about things that were in the newspaper, et cetera, et cetera. And then one night I said, well, yesterday President Kennedy said blah, 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 blah. And the place started laughing. So I said, people think that's funny. I'll keep it in. But I'm a New Englander. Anyways, I have a Yankee accent, I guess,
right.
Naturally. So it wasn't too difficult.
Family, family, family. Jack, there's just too much family. Can't we ever get away alone?
tomorrow. I promise tomorrow we'll go away together tomorrow. No more family for a while now, I promise. Now, turn off the light. Good night, Jackie.
Good night, Jack.
Good night, Bobby. Good night, Ethel.
Good night, Jack. Good night, Teddy. Good night, Peter.
Good night, Panther. Good night, Ethel. Good night,
WOKY, Berry, 9092.
Thank you for listening to Bob Berry's Unearthed Interviews. Be sure to subscribe and rate our podcast on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts. You can find all the episodes at WisconsinBroadcastingMuseum.org. Check out Bob Berry's book, Rock and Roll Radio Milwaukee. Book sale proceeds support Angels Kids Fund and Donate Life Wisconsin. The preceding program was made possible by a generous contribution from Terry Vaughn.